create our own community engagement programming. This weekend is a really big weekend for us. It's Council of Colors weekend. We've been participating in the Council of Colors for the past 12 years, sponsoring what we call the Wolverine Outdoor Stage. We have 2 days of music starting tomorrow and Sunday. This event is new. This is our inaugural kickoff reception and panel. Everybody, Council of Colors. This event was made possible by the U of M Arts Initiative. We received a grant from them to help us expand our offerings, and we're really excited to offer this. So here today to discuss or to celebrate the 50th anniversary of hip hop. I just myself turned 50 this year, so I think it's really great that I no pros fee or anything. But excited about that, and what better way we figured to bring an academic component into our entertainment, performance-based events. We want to have a discussion. What better way to talk about hip hop in Detroit and Detroit's place in hip hop. So this panel is titled "More Than 8 Mile: Detroit's Quest for Hip Hop Glory." As the write-up says, many people attribute, hip hop is originated in New York. Yeah. A lot of people attribute the culture to being advanced in LA, Houston, Atlanta. Not a lot of people talk about Detroit. But Detroit was not just a consumer of hip hop. We were contributors to the culture. Yeah. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. We have a wonderful panel up here, people with lots of different experience in different eras, different spaces, different times to discuss this. And I'm going to turn it over to Professor Antonio Collier. He's going to lead the discussion tonight. Professor Collier is from the University of Michigan School of Music, Theater, and Dance, and he has helped. And for those of you who may not know this, the School of Music, Theater, and Dance at U of M is one of the best music schools in the country. They produce many Tony Award-winning performers and artists, many musical geniuses, and lots of things. And this brother up here coaches and helps a lot of students make their way, and he's blessing us here today by leading this panel. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. So I'm really excited to be here today to have this conversation with these incredible artists. Clearly I value artists because they provide, so much for societies in which they exist. But I don't want to jump too far in because I'm one of those people, I like to have a conversation and a dialogue and get it going. But I want to actually start with having you all introduce yourselves. Tell us, your name and what you love most about hip hop, and then we'll get to the discussion. Ruben, you're to my left, so I'm sorry, you probably got to start with you.
All right, so how's everybody doing? My name is Ruben Wood. I'm actually from Atlanta, Georgia, and originally from Brunswick, Georgia. So I'm actually the president of QC DJs. So we're a division of quality control music, one of the biggest independent labels in the South. Home to Detroit's own Icewear Vezo, Baby Money, Lil Baby, the Migos, and the list goes on. So what hip hop means to me is it actually changed my life because straight out of high school, I got into the music and entertainment industry. So, yeah.
I'm Sam Donald, and I represent Detroit Music's MUSIX, to our 6 genres of music of which Detroiters have excelled, and squarely to the 50th anniversary of hip hop, taking me to what hip hop means to me. What hip hop means to me is the opportunity to expand the musical base of the next, or what was the next generation of artists. They took the instruments out of the schools, but that didn't stop the generation that 50 years ago decided that to whatever was left over, we're going to take it and we're going to continue to fuse the jazz, the hip hop, everything else into this new form of music. So that's what I squarely love about hip hop, that it began not out of a new rebellion, but out of the ingenuity of that group of teenagers and young adults 50 years ago. So that's what I love about it.
Grace and peace. I want to say thank you to Brother Ship for the wonderful work that you have done in regards to organizing this event. Thank you, Dr. Collier, for moderating and your work at University of Michigan. But what hip hop means to me is rap and rapping, right? So we always define rap as being revolutionary African poetry. We define rappers as being righteous African poets purposely educating for revolution. So if one understands what hip hop really is, it was born out of systemic oppression. It was born out of poverty. It was born out of the marginalization of Black people and out of suppression. So it was African people and Puerto Rican brothers and sisters, but mainly African people, utilizing their voice to express their humanity, to express their being, to express their agenda and their fight for the liberation of their people in the particular communities out of which they were born. So hip hop for me is really one of the most liberating voices in the world, right? To me, it's one of the most significant genres of African music, of American music, but really international music. So hip hop saved the lives of so many brothers and sisters. It transformed the lives of so many more brothers and sisters. And it was the conduit, it was the tool, the mechanism through which the 1990s Black liberation struggle was born, through which the Black student movement was born, shut them down, fight the power. I can go on and on, right? So hip hop was born out of consciousness. Its original construction was not rooted in misogyny. It was not rooted in the hate for Black women. It was not rooted in the glorification of violence against African people. That's not where it came from. It came out of a place of oppression, and it was the instrument for liberation of our people. And at some point in time, we need to get real serious about our Sankofa responsibility, which is to return hip hop to its original source and its original meaning and the purpose for its emanation.
So everything he said, facts. You know what I'm saying? This is my good friend from our childhood. And we both are rappers from Detroit. My name is Amir. Everybody calls me Merciless Amir.
The greatest Detroit rapper ever.
I'll pay you later for that. Thanks. But listen, you know what I'm saying? It's a pleasure to be here. You know, my man Sam down over just hit me up and asked me to come down. We all just did the Legends show with all the New York legends this weekend at the Fox Theater. Had a great time. And, you know, we came out and did a medley. Chaos was a part of it. That's his original rap name. I don't know if you mentioned that. It's Furry now, but he was once Chaos. And, you know, man, for me, you know, I'm an artist and a producer. I've been doing it for a long time. I worked in the industry in a lot of areas, from New York to LA to, you know what I'm saying, England. And, you know, I love hip hop, and really for me, it's a culture that has permeated, you know what I'm saying, like every other culture in the world. And, you know, it's probably the leading music genre in the world today. You know, top selling artists are all the hip hop artists. So, you know, that says something about, you know, the artist and the impact that this music has. And, you know, I'm just proud to be a part of it and a contributor to it. And I'm glad that I'm from Detroit doing it, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Representing the D. So thanks everybody for being here too.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Deidre D. Essence Smith, and I am an MC and spoken word artist and sometimes a vocalist. But what hip hop is to me is I often call it the Eve gene of contemporary music because it's rooted in linguistics. And without your voice, there's not very much music to be had. You can play an instrument, but the very first instrument is your voice. And so I really believe that hip hop is the catalyst for every genre of music that we see now. It's actually a new form of music when we consider music. But after 50 years, everything seems to return back to that base root of linguistics. And hip hop started with it. So that's why I believe it's a continuum of what energy and music is. because when everything else fails, you still have your voice. And so as an MC, I pride myself on having my voice and on using my lyrical dexterity. I come from a school of hip hop where if somebody said they were doper than you, you had to go see about it. That's not so much the case now. And I appreciate the current landscape. It's facing criticism, but like with anything, it's growing and burgeoning still. But I'm really thankful to be here. I also teach the first rap songwriting course at U of M School of Music, Theater, and Dance.
Wow.
Check that out when you're ready. And I also believe in the balance in hip hop with the masculine and feminine presence of it. And I'm here to represent that feminine presence within hip hop. So thanks for having me, and I look forward to engaging in conversation this evening.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Smith, also known as Jig Master Mike. I'm a dancer, so I actually specialize in the art of Detroit jig. So something that is, it's from here. It belongs to us, and I'm the only dancer up here with a lot of people. One of the things that with rappers and poets and that communication for dancers, body language is our source of communication. So our expression, and for a lot of the youth that I work with, even myself, I'm from the hood, Detroit, East Side, and a big part of that why hip hop important to me is it was an outlet to keep me out the streets while I was in the streets. It was one of those things that allowed me to express myself. You get to the battle and you got to work on your craft. You got to, figure out ways to, stay positive and be positive in the midst of all the stuff that's going on, and allow you to be able to express yourself, even though you may not be the most vocal person. So that's what hip hop is. Hip hop is about expression, about communication, and we use body language first to be able to do that, and that expression comes outwards. So. I have a school. It's called Jig Masters. If you want to check it out, but it's centered around Detroit culture, Detroit dance that belongs to us. It's from the 1970s, and I teach a contemporary style of it. Back in the day it was a lot slower, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
So as you all can see, we have a pretty diverse panel, generationally, artistically. And so I think I want to start a little bit controversially by asking the question, given the current state of hip hop, where it is as a cultural movement that embraces and discusses with dance, music, visual art, film, literature, poetry, is hip hop dead?
Oh.
Whoever wants to, jump in.
All right, yeah. So, question is hip hop dead?
Yeah.
No, hip hop is not dead. Hip hop is alive, what I'm saying? And hip hop is growing to new levels. There's a lot of controversy about, a lot of the major mainstream artists and the content of the music that they create. And, it can be questionable at times. A lot of times, we just listen to that music for the beat and the rhythm, what I'm saying? The cadence, is saying a lot. But then, of course, the lyrics say a lot of things that, people have issues with, and, I'm of the opinion that, a lot of those things are brought about by the industry that, that we find ourselves in, and the influences of the CEOs in the business, what I'm saying? It's for monetary, and it's for other reasons to, keep the community in control. I want to put it like that, but what I'm saying, and keep the checks and balances the way that they want them. But these artists are still nonetheless talented, and they're out there going hard for theirs because it's their livelihood. Now, maybe we need to figure out a way to, make things a little bit more positive and, enlighten these artists about the industry that they find themselves in. A lot of times it's a little bit too late to turn around. A lot of people call it no restore. I don't know if a lot of you guys listen to Drink Champs and, you know what I'm saying, all of these types of podcasts that are out there, but they tell you a little bit about what's going on in the industry. But, you know what I'm saying, we can't take that away from the artists and the talent that the producers and, you know, people in this game still possess. You feel me?
Thank you, Eb. I don't think hip hop is dead at all. I think it's kind of a silly question, really. Not because you're silly, Doctor. I think that's artists have made songs about the death of hip hop. I used to love her, right? That's common, right? And I understood what common meant. You know, he was specifically speaking to the fact that certain messages or certain aspects of the original iteration of hip hop no longer exists or was dying out. For instance, you know, the way that we dress, the content, the focus on lyrical complexity, right? The DJ, you don't even see rappers with DJ these days, right? So I think that's what they're referring to. That's what Common was referring to specifically. But hip hop is not dead, it's just evolved or devolved. Depends on your perspective, right? Hip hop is just taking on a different form. There's a different iteration of hip hop now that we see in comparison to what we saw in the late 80s and the early 90s. But hip hop has really, it's really infiltrated, if you may, every aspect of popular culture throughout the world. How can it be dead? I mean, do we even hear music without a hip hop beat in it? Do we even hear music without a rap, right? I mean, songs become number one because rappers are affixed to those songs, right? So hip hop is, at this point, it's like asking, is jazz dead? No, it is not. It's like asking, is soul music is dead? No, it is not. It's like asking, is R&B is dead? No, it is not. Hip hop at this point would never ever die. The question becomes, are we going to return hip hop to its original origin? Are we going to return hip hop to what it was created to be, right? So hip hop is just not reduced to an artist and their latest hit. Hip hop is reduced to the personalities that was born out of the culture that created the culture. Dr. Earl Henderson is a professor who is one of the world's most renowned and most respected political scientists. Dr. Earl Henderson was also a member of EA Force, which was one of Detroit's earlier rap groups. He also was a member of Save Our Sons and Daughters, one of the leaders. Ms. Barfield, of course, if you go watch, I would encourage you to go to Amazon Prime and pull up Tanner 88. Tanner 88 was an HBO documentary, which is about this fictitious character running for president named Tanner, right? And a lot of his shows or a lot of his episodes was rooted in the urban peace and justice movement, which was started by Ms. Barfield, which Dr. Henderson was a part of in the mid and late 80s. And you know how they started off one of those episodes was with an event. Urban peace and justice event, a peace event, an anti-gun violence event in the city of Detroit. And guess who opened that up? Prince Vince. Prince Vince is one of the most respected and most well-known rap artists of our time. This is in 87. This is in 88, right? This is Prince Vince with Miss Barfield on Tanner 88 on HBO, which became the substratum for The Wire and all these other programs that came later on. That started in Detroit. That is hip hop. You see, so you have to understand what hip hop is, especially when you consider Detroit. Detroit hip hop doesn't have to take a backseat to anybody. I'm hip hop. Google me and see the work that we've done in regards to urban peace and justice work, peace work, anti-violence work, criminal justice reform, prison reform, police accountability and transparency. This is all a part of our work. Reentry work. I'm hip hop. Right? I'm born out of hip hop. As long as I live, it can't die. As long as Dr. Henderson lives, it can't die. As long as Ms. Barfield lives, it can't die. As long as these brothers and sisters on this platform live, it cannot die. We cannot reduce and minimize hip hop to the hottest joint. That ain't what hip hop is, right? It's a cultural phenomenon that was born out of an earnest determination of African people to advocate and fight for their liberation, education, and empowerment. And as long as Black people are still fighting for the liberation, hip hop lives.
The answer is definitive no. And to further it to Detroit and what we have done and what we continue to do, it would be kind of pretty. Your dad young at 50. Hip hop predominates all music so much to the point to where it's blended in and merged and infiltrated every other genre. Even to Billboard, the accounting of the sales of records, it's now not just R&B or charts, it's the R&B hip hop charts. So it's infiltrated everything. So how can something die that's pretty much just morphed into everything, into the history of hip hop, to the culture? It's the rappers, and there are other elements of it that I'm sure that we're going to discuss, but I will say that it can't die Detroit style.
That's right.
Get the pizza, Detroit style rappers, Detroit style producers. Our young producers are now some of the predominant, beyond Detroit, industry-wide producers. So the Detroit thing is a beautiful thing. And so it's so beautiful that, yes, sir, it still lives.
To be honest with you, I got a short answer. It can't die, clearly, not just because of what they said, but me being from the South, it's been here all this time. I know these are OGs to me because they've been in the game way before I've been. So if it's been in their time era, it's still in mine. What they tell you.
So, like you, I'm not from Detroit. I'm from Florida. I'm from that place. But I have mad respect for Detroit. I've been here in Michigan now for almost a year, and I like what I see happening in Detroit and the promise that Detroit holds. I want to shift to the soundscape. What would you say Detroit contributed to the soundscape of hip hop? Like what hip hop sounds like?
From my personal opinion, growing up listening to hip hop records outside of Eminem, Detroit definitely has so many other artists, i.e. Trick. And I met him in person as, one of the OGs as well. So Detroit really got its own sound, and it really just developed it over the years, just from my personal perspective from being from the South. So the influence has always been there, not just from the sale perspective or the number perspective, but just overall culture.
The beautiful thing about the beginning of hip hop to me is that it included what Detroit is all about. It did not abandon instrumentation.
Yeah.
So when we had DJ Los, his dad was one of the musicians who was putting together the music. They built it from scratch in New York, but the Detroit way is that we built it based upon the traditions of us being a musician-based city. So our style was a style, and I don't know so much about his right now, but I do know that when you have the same musicians that played on Parliament Funkadelic records, taking their sons and their sons' friends into the studio to help them do what they did, that's a Detroit advantage. And so I'll let these artists themselves speak for the rest of this. But I know that when you bridged over from what those wonderful musicians did with these young guys at the time, they're still pretty young now, when they were younger, I know it had to have been a pleasure to get those older cats to come in and pretty much just say, hey, here we go. Let us lend to what you all are creating right now.
Yeah, that's a profound point, brother. And you're absolutely correct. When you look at the orientation of original Detroit hip hop, you will see that a lot of our original music, going back to Brother Robert S. Speaking of social justice, Robert S. was from the Detroit Grand Rapids area. He was the first Detroit artist. This had to be '83 that was signed to a major record label. Right? You may have seen him on the New Dance Show back in the day. Robert S. was the first one of us. He's a good friend of mine to this day. He's a county commissioner in Kent County in Grand Rapids. And he also sits on the Governor's Black Leadership Advisory Council with me. In fact, he's the chair of that council. This brother owns like 3 or 4 radio stations in Grand Rapids. And his first track was original music. Carl Butch Small, who was the founder of World One Records, which was my record company, which housed Casa Maestro, Easy B and DJ Lowe's, Ebony, or they used to call it Nikki D, right? And of course, Dice, all of us, Dice was really the first artist amongst us who had an album that was pretty much full of samples. But before Dice, most of our music was original music. Our biggest hit, which was Maestro on the Flex, which was the second Detroit song that broke Billboard 100s. A lot of people don't know that. It was all original music, right? And this is because Butch came from Was Not Was, he came from Parliament Funkadelic, Ohio Players. He played for a lot of the funk groups in the 70s and 80s, and he brought that kind of instrumentation and that lens of music to our record company, and a lot of our songs was born out of that context, and that was all original funk music. That's Carl Butch Small. Carl Butch Small then went to World One Records, not World One, I'm sorry, Death Row, and Snoop's album, Dre's album, a lot of the Death Row music that you hear that's original music, a lot of that instrumentation came from Carl Butch Smalls, who produced Chaos and Maestro and Easy Being Lows in 87, 88, and 89, and still in the early 2000s, Butch Small, he still had an impact on the industry by producing the biggest hip hop songs this world has ever known, right? That's Detroit hip hop. Listen, let me tell you something. Detroit, I will never, in nothing, activism, community organizing, Pan-Africanism, Black nationalism, hip hop, R&B, soul, jazz, whatever. I will never surrender to the notion that we're second fiddle to anybody. That's a lie from the devil. Detroit has always been the leaders in everything significant about popular culture in this country.
Yes, indeed. So I think the question is, how did Detroit influence hip hop?
The
Right.
soundscape of hip hop.
The soundscape of hip hop? I mean, I would actually say in a major way. You know what I'm saying? You know, Tafari just mentioned one of our brothers, Prince Vince. Prince Vince had a big record in Detroit. He had sampled George Clinton Flashlight. Yeah. And so, yeah, the song was called Gangster Funk. You know, one of the greatest songs in Detroit history. I think it's one of the greatest songs in hip hop, period. You know what I'm saying? And that was a big record. He was signed, he ended up being signed to Polygram Records, which I also was signed to Polygram Records later too. But at that time, that record was a national record. I mean, it was heard in neighborhoods across the country. So, you know, when Snoop Dogg and Warren G and those guys came out with the G-Funk and the G-Funk era, well, G-Funk, what's that stand for? Gangster Funk. You know what I'm saying? Which came from the homie Prince Vince.
That's right. That's right.
So, and not only that, you know what I'm saying? Tafari just also mentioned Carl, you know what I'm saying? Carl Butch Smalls. That's our OG, you know what I'm saying? Talented musician. And then his partner, you know what I'm saying? Tony Green. Tony Green played the bass on all the Death Row music, G-Funk music, Indo Smoke, Gin and Juice. You know what I'm saying? So this was all influenced by Detroit music and Detroit musicians and Motown musicians. These guys played from the Motown era, you know what I'm saying? So it's infused, and that's what made that music great. You know what I'm saying? The instrumentation.
Your song,
Yeah,
your greatest hit was all original.
It was all original, for sure. You know what I'm saying? Had live musicians, live guitar, and then we had, you know, the maestro going crazy on the drum track on my record. But, you know, I had the pleasure to work with some Motown people, some Detroit artists, and you know, George Clinton was one that I was in the studio, recorded songs with him for Detroit radio, and, you know, then, you know, did music with Teddy Riley, you know what I'm saying, and people of that. And, you know, Grandmaster Flash was one of my mentors. I did songs with Grandmaster Flash, and these people all knew about Detroit music, and they could all tell me a story about somebody from Detroit that was influential to them. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's no question about the impact that Detroit made in this music industry in hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Not just hip hop, but absolutely in hip hop.
I'm gonna go back to the last question, then I'll segue into this current one. Hip hop will never die as long as there are marginalized people that need an outlet.
That's right.
Hip hop will never die. There are marginalized people.
That's right.
That need a creative outlet. Detroit's very impactful hand in the soundscape of hip hop has to do with this rhythm. Where hip hop is very comfortable in 60 beats per minute, 80 beats per minute, Detroit had a way of speeding things up. Talk about just to my left, that sped up music and tempo. Let me make sure my mic's right. Check one. Check two. Any more disturbances? When we think about those beats per minute, we consider body movement. Like my brother to the left was just speaking about. Detroit has a quick tongue because we don't have time to waste.
That's right.
Even though it's a major city, we have a way of slowing down our way of life, but we gotta talk fast, and you gotta listen fast to keep up. And so I think about R.J. Watkins' new band show, showcasing that music. I think about our techno scene that influences our tempo, that influences the world. So Detroit is essentially a heartbeat for hip hop.
That's right.
When we think about the soundscape of it and our place in it, and I'm gonna pass it to the left.
Real good point. Thank you, sister. Thank you. Thank you, sister.
You know, when I think about the way that Detroit in particular kind of adjusted the sound, it wasn't just in Detroit for hip hop, it was throughout the world and in other avenues of music. You know, you look at it, this reminds me of Juan Atkins when he created, you know, in the techno world with the beat machine and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, when you listen to that beat and those elements of, you know, things like people like Missy Elliott, you know, you mentioned Trick, different artists in different genres. You listen, you hear that Detroit sound, which that, you know, that techno, you know, which you kind of started hearing in other cities as well, starting to develop. But that heart of it, where it came from, was here, you know, and heart in particular. You know, when we look at jitting is straight up funk. You know, you listen to the music, you knock your head, that communication. When we jit, you get that experience from everybody. It's a lot different than other dance styles. So where you just, you know, you're looking at it and it looks great, you know, but you can really have an exchange spiritually, emotionally with jit. And that came from the funk. You know, you got to think Funketeers back in the day. When they started that was nothing but pop locking mixed with jit. You know, they turned that into the Funketeers adjusted that in Unstoppables, or, you know, like people like Keith and Ron from Unstoppables, they adjusted that and it further evolved. So hip hop, you say it's hip hop dead. We got a saying in the underground jit culture called Jitting Ain't Dead. And, you know, in Detroit, a lot of people, even from Detroit, they kind of like, you know, forgot about it, or they was like, oh, I don't see it, nobody's doing it. One of the big things what happened was, you know, in my personal opinion, you know, like hip hop in general, you said evolve or devolve, you know, one of the things is it was suppressed, I believe. You got to think, you know, it was a very passionate, emotional style dance. It's about battling, building yourself up, getting better than the next person. And you know, what happens, and you look at places where the music's being played, you know, the different, you know, clubs and whatnot, it started to be suppressed where, you know, if you got into, people were getting into fights because of that passion, this crew against this crew, this side of town, east side versus west side, you know, a lot of that was happening, and it's hip hop, period. It's people were trying to express themselves in the middle of the hood, period. But in the midst of that, you know, that the music was, I would say, kind of like suppressed, which allowed the dance style to kind of see where it started to die down. You know, I go for days in that part, but at the end of the day, expression, you know, it's not going to die unless we don't pass it down to our youth. You know, with hip hop in general, it's not about, I don't jit the way people used to do back in the day. I teach traditional and I teach, you know, contemporary. So it's one of those things where with hip hop, you gotta let people know where things come from, but you gotta allow them to be able to express and evolve it for themselves. So we're supposed to be guides. Now, where they take it, where you take your kids, they turn 18, they turn 21, you teach them the way, but at the end of the day, they gotta make their way. So, it's about evolving and teaching people, and I think that's part of where the music, how it can touch people.
And let me add this, because I want to put it where the goats can get it. So, JJ Fad, y'all know JJ Fad, right? That ain't number Juan Atkins, man.
That's right.
That ain't number Juan Atkins. Y'all know how big that Supersonic, that's all Detroit, right? Soul Sonic Force, African Bambaataa, that's all Detroit, right? Sister Stallion, what's her name? Megan Thee Stallion. The first song on her album, that's all T Grizzly, period. When Bleak come, oh, definitely Missy Elliott, several of her tracks, all Detroit. When Bleak, not Bleak, but this boy from, they got locked up. The brother came home from Philadelphia. Meek Mill. The first song on Meek Mill album, that's all T Grizzly, right? Drake's two of his biggest albums when he came out with that world Afrobeat / techno / house. Techno and house was born out of Detroit. That's all Detroit. So we're talking about, I just mentioned, for the biggest artists in the history of this world. Their music was born out of Detroit sound. We take back seats to nobody. Period. We are the foundation. We are the mothership. We are the architects. We are the master creators. It's all Detroit. So you ask what Detroit, what's been the impact of Detroit on hip hop? Everything.
And the beautiful thing about all of this that's been said right now is that the Detroit way is that we're not upset about it. Detroiters, we're busy being who we are. So it's done with a knowledge of self, of self-worth, and the self-determination. Okay, they had an element, we love breakdancing. Detroit is our original. Okay, they were breakdancing in Detroit, but we came up with our own thing. Jit, he's gonna teach me how to jit later. And that's all I have to say about that.
How's everybody doing right now?
Right now.
What up, dog? All right. Yeah, I just came from doing the show, but my name is Nick Speed, music producer. I've been doing this for a while now. I did music with 50 Cent, Pusha T, Lloyd Banks, Snoop Dogg, Big Sean, Kim, Be Real from Cypress Hill, Opreme Shakur, Danny Brown, Big Herc, Street World Wine, Stretch Money, Seven in General. Well, y'all get the point. Juan Atkins, gotta say him, But I'm just a big fan of music. I'm a music historian, just a historian in general. And it's an honor and privilege to be on this panel. It's an honor and a privilege to be on this panel right here, so we can discuss, the 50 years of hip hop and the role that Detroit had. And from my opinion, Detroit had a role in it from day one.
That's right.
Because, all of that music was inspired by Motown. If you actually listen to the message, the child is born with no state of mind, blind in the ways of mankind. He said that he was actually imitating the lyrics of Stevie Wonder. A child was born in uptown Mississippi. Just enough for the city.
That's right.
So that just shows you the influence of Detroiters, Motown, the Detroit sound. We can go all the way to the West Coast. You gotta remember, a lot of Detroiters moved to the West Coast, in the early 70s. So we had a big influence because they were the biggest stars in the world at that time. So, obviously Detroit culture bled over into, what was going on out there, from the P-Funk era, you know, the Motown era, all of that stuff, you know what I mean? And it's like, I actually was even born in California, with my mom going out there, hanging with Marvin Gaye and all them, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, shout out to my pops, Bill Speed. He created Video Soul for BET with Donnie Simpson.
Detroit?
Yeah, so that's, you know, like we're actually working on a documentary about him right now, but that was like the first national platform where, you know, black music videos were being shown. So, you know, like music videos wasn't even in the budget at first, you know, like that made cable hot within itself. Like people wasn't into spending extra money on TV until the music videos came out.
The box.
Yeah, the box. MTV, yeah. MTV wouldn't play black music videos if y'all didn't know.
We had the box.
Michael Jackson had to protest, his company had to protest for them to play Billie Jean, one of the biggest songs ever, from the biggest album of all time. This black man couldn't get his music played on MTV, and he low-key saved MTV. They would have been out of business. You know, and my dad was playing that way before the 83, you know what I mean? But regardless, I do want to say this too, like from the beginning days of recorded rap, which have started in like 79, accordingly, you know, according to certain sources, some would say 78. But with King Tim III, you know, you have rappers like, it was like at least like 20 rap singles that probably came out within that year. And one of them who came out in 1980 was a guy named Spider D. And Spider D's record label was called New Detroit Records. He's a New York artist that attended, I want to say U of M, I think. And he got with some musicians in Detroit, and he recorded this song in Detroit, and it was one of the first rap records ever released in 1980. So y'all can look that up, New Detroit Records, Spider D, 1980. You know what I mean? And then you got, you know, I mean, George Clinton has always been, you know, one of the main people that supported, you know, hip hop artists, and I believe even, you know, gave birth to that culture, because funk is the main ingredient. You know, they was playing those James Brown records and those Parliament records, getting down. You know what I mean? But like you said, that Juan Atkins, that's what they was breakdancing to, coast to coast. And then that influenced the electro music that Dr. Dre and all those guys was making on the West Coast, Egyptian Lover. So, you know, and then we had Chaos and Maestro. You get what I'm saying? We had Merciless Amir. We had the innovators of styles and like just the beat selection that they was even making, you know, you know, Kool Moe Dee and Rakim had a certain kind of beats. But Detroit's Most Wanted had a different kind of beat, you know, and it was more, you know, Detroit is a dancing town. So we was watching that new dance show, you know, and it was like in the scene, it was like rap was going on. They had DJ mixes live on TV, stuff that never been done. So, you know, I've actually seen like a TV show that's kind of like they were trying to be like the new dance show, but it was in Atlanta. So yeah, man. Hey, but like I say, man, Detroit is incredible music-wise, culture-wise, food-wise, everything, you know, so we just love everything about Detroit. And yeah, what's on your mind?
He's from Atlanta.
Okay, okay. I love Atlanta. I love Atlanta.
And then one thing just to say, we mentioned Motown a lot, but United Sound, and speaking to hip hop today, hell of a produced T Grizz, we're talking about the future.
T Grizzly.
He produced T Grizzly's album over at the same United Sound Studios where George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic did everything that they did.
Flashlight.
More
Bounce to the House.
All of that happened in Detroit. We mentioned Motown a lot. I'm just taking time to get this up to United Sound. Motown actually recorded over at United Sound. Barry Gordy did before he started Motown, but to the influence of United Sound to hip hop today, as well as taking it back to George, it's a very, very, very important spot in hip hop. And that's all I want to say about that.
Okay, so I want to talk about then the content or subject matter that inspires Detroit-based hip hop, whether it be in dance or music or poetry. What stories are Detroit hip hop artists, what stories have they told historically over the last 50 years? And what stories are they continuing to tell about what it means to be from Detroit?
I mean, one thing I could say is, I've never heard of scam rap before, Detroit came out with it. Scam, I mean, Detroit is a scam capital, right? You can't scam unless you've been scammed. They hit you with the flim flam, you know what I'm saying? Everybody been scammed before. So I know that kind of rap never came out to Detroit. You know, that T Grizzly flow, when his song came out, that first day out, I even predicted that. I said, everybody about to rap like this. I knew it, because it was like, you know, that's like the flow that a lot of Detroiters had. You know, he was like the embodiment. He had, you know, he put his own spin on it, but he was the embodiment of the rhythm and like kind of like being a little bit ahead of the beat. You know what I mean? And I think Blade Ice started that. And to me, it sounded like he was, you know, when Blade would be rapping kind of like a little bit ahead of the beat, it's like, to me, it just sounded like he was just so excited he couldn't wait to rap. So he didn't care if he was on beat or not. Blade was like the first swag rapper. You know what I mean? But his lyrics was cold too, but he just had so much flair and finesse. It didn't even matter if he rapped on beat or not. But who's to say it wasn't on beat? That was the beat, that was the rhythm that he chose. I mean, there is no right way. There is no wrong way. You know? And that's what we gotta know about art. Art is however you make it. You know? If I want my beat to go a certain way, I don't have to follow the way that the radio says it needs to sound. I can create something completely original and then mess around. We got a whole new genre now. Just like Juan Atkins did with techno. And we got house music, like you said. So, you know, the stories that Detroit has been telling, I mean, you gotta think, man, sometimes people call us like a ghost town, like people, you know, it's like, they're like, where are the people at? So they wanna know what's going on inside of those houses. So we were some of the first places to have dope spots, you know what I mean? Like selling dope out the house. So I know these are some crazy topics, but this is some of the stories that Detroit has told, you know, in their music. Well, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about businesses outside of their house, their homes. Like Barry Gordy did with Motown, right?
Yes.
I meant like, you know, dope. When I said dope, like I meant like, that's dope. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. All right, so when I think about Detroit music, you know what I'm saying, I think about a lot of hustlers, because y'all know for the Motor City and everything. Just everybody I've ever listened to from Detroit has always talked about the struggle, the hustle, what it took to get to where they at, you know, overcoming oppression, but also just their current situation. So I think, you know, overall, for the general consumer, anybody who listens to Detroit music, y'all definitely gonna tell a story. You know what I'm saying? And it's gonna be y'all story. It might be about scam. It might be about dope. You know, it might be about Motown, but it's gonna be a story. It might be about Cartier's top 10. So exactly. And that's another thing, you know, Detroit is known for being flashy. You know, yeah, I do set a lot of trends when it comes to that. But the main thing is like the art of storytelling is very influential here, and how y'all got to that point. So that's the main thing that I myself took from Detroit music and from the culture.
Yeah, I agree with the brothers. I mean, you had that element without question, but that's not what, that wasn't the dominant aspect of our culture, right? So you definitely had, of course, you had cats in any impoverished pocket of any urban center or any community, period. You don't have cats who are doing, you know, extreme things and resorting to desperate measures to feed their families. We get that. So we did have some scamming. Of course, the dope game, you know, that existed here, but it existed in Miami and New York as well, right? I'm saying, so cats were telling those stories as well. 6 a.m, police at my door. Fresh Adidas squeak across the bathroom floor. That's Ice-T on the West Coast, right? I said, dope man, you know, that's NWA, right? So I wouldn't dare suggest that Detroit created that. Detroit, of course, because you have, you know, impoverished pockets within urban centers. Within this urban center, you're going to have that expression of a certain reality. But Detroit is so much more than that, right? When you look at the whole the African-centered education movement, that's Detroit. That's born out of Detroit. Imani Humphreys, right? Malik Yakini, that's born out of Detroit, right? When you look at, of course, Motor City, you know, the automotive industry, that's Detroit as well, right? When you look at, of course, Pan-African struggle, you look at Chokwe Lumumba, right? You look at Kwame Atta, Mama Joanne Watson, right? All that's Detroit. Dr. Gloria House, or Mama Neb, as we like to call her. All that's Detroit. You talk about Chili and McGilla, chocolate and vanilla, how can polar bears swing on bounds to the gorillas? X-Clan. When X-Clan would come into the city, I would escort them around, and they told me out of their own mouths. Brother Tahinzu, who was Brother Jay, said that he was heavily influenced in regards to his Pan-Africanism and Black nationalism. He was heavily influenced by the Black Power movement in Detroit. When Chuck D would come to Detroit, his grandmama stayed on Orleans. I would take Chuck D to go see his grandmama. Chuck D said his politics, you know, came out of Detroit. And why is that? Because Chuck D was a member of what? The Nation of Islam. He was the fruit of Islam. What was the first mosque from the Nation of Islam? Right here in Detroit. You feel what I'm saying? So when you start talking about conscious hip hop, right? Aware hip hop, woke hip hop, Pan-African, Black nationalist hip hop, that's Detroit. Detroit has always been the Mecca of Black power, the Mecca of Black liberation struggle. Again, the greatest political scientific mind in the world is Dr. Earl Hennessy. He come out of the Brewster Projects. He was a rapper, a member of EA Force. He helped lead the 1989 rebellion at Wayne State University. We called it the City. And he comes out of Cass Tech, Brewster Projects, University of Michigan. He wrote one of the first hip hop political books in the history of this country. It was called Rap and Black Nationalism. Go look it up. That was one of his first books. That comes out of Detroit. Right? So when you talk about socially aware, social justice, you start talking about political rap, that's Detroit. And I don't even have to mention my own work, but you know, we were the first conscious hip hop group in Detroit. I'm born out of Dr. Earl Henderson. I call him Kyojo Madaraka. I'm born out of Chokwe Lumumba, New African People's Organization of the Republic of New Africa. I'm born out of General Baker and the Black Liberation League of Revolutionary Black Workers. I'm born out of the Revolutionary African Movement. I'm born out of So Sad and Save Our Sons and Daughters. You see, I'm born out of, I helped create Detroit 300. I'm born out of political struggle. And I'm one of the original founders of Detroit hip hop. That's not by mistake. That's not by happenstance. That's intentional. Because that was the very foundation. Even the rappers who were gangster, they all were contributors to the urban peace and justice movement, which was founded by Miss Clementine Barfield. You know the teddy bears you see at the street, at the hood memorials? You know, they pour out the teddy bears and the blues and all that. You know where that started? In Detroit. Miss Barfield starts that. On the back of the killing of her son, Derek Barfield, who was my homeboy. Miss Barfield starts that. That's Detroit. So Detroit, yeah, of course, you know, we got bona fide players and hustlers and gangsters and all that in Detroit. But that's just a small aspect of what Detroit is. And I will not stand in this space, in this room, and allow Detroit's version of hip hop to be defined primarily or exclusively by the gangster shit. We so much more than that. Detroit right now has the most radical, revolutionary, transformative, formerly incarcerated people in this country. Daryl Woods, 29 and a half years in penitentiary for a time crime he did not commit. He was sentenced to die in prison. He was such a bona fide soldier for our people in prison. Governor Snyder, of all people, commuted his sentence. Raphael B. Johnson, Dr. Raphael B. Johnson, got his PhD from UND Mercy. Killed the man several years ago, transformed his life, right? Is a bona fide soldier in our community, a scholar, a professor. He's now the chief of staff of Senator Sylvia Santana. We got brother Yusuf Shakur. Y'all know brother Yusuf Bunty Shakur in the House of Akur. That's Detroit, formerly incarcerated brother. Incarcerated for a crime he didn't commit. Zone A gangster, original Zone A gangster leader. The brother's one of the most revolutionary black minds in this country, currently working on his PhD right here at University of Michigan. Brother Shaka Senghor, one of the co-architects of the First Step Act. That brother, one of the nation's leading writers, and his interview is what Oprah Winfrey coined her greatest interview ever. He's from Detroit, formerly incarcerated brother who was incarcerated for killing a man.
And you know what else is important? The presence of, we're talking about.
That's Detroit.
That's Detroit. And what else I loved about Detroit coming up was it had somebody to her life experiences saying, I'm smiley, but I'm not friendly. Yeah. So you had
That is Detroit.
Someone, that is Detroit. And so just talking about your everyday regular life was a part of that. And to the female hip hop legacy, I'm gonna pass the mic to you and be quiet.
Well, the sound, much like what's been discussed on this panel is, Detroit sound is a sound that isn't afraid to embody the polarities.
That's right.
Of hip-hop experience and its contributions as far as Detroit is concerned. So I'm a woman who has experienced friends that have had the dope boy lifestyles, the Pan-Africanism lifestyles. Praise God for that. Barbara Mara era. We get to so many iconic figures in the city of Detroit that are living out this hip-hop experience. We can talk about Operation Get Down Timbuktu. We can also talk about 10 Toes and Window Rock. And nothing should be so polarizing that we don't recognize the significance of each figure within this landscape of hip-hop in Detroit. The beauty in that is that you can go to any individual within this genre, within this city, and get their lived experience. From that lived experience, you develop a narrative empathy. Narrative empathy can only come from you telling me exactly who you are, where you're from, and how you contribute. With you doing that, be you a dope boy, a professor, a fruit seller, whoever you are, I have gained knowledge of what you do and how you contribute. And the great thing about Detroit hip hop, it says, I won't leave you behind in spite of how you identify. You're welcome, and you're welcome to come along and elevate and extend how high you decide to ascend. But until you do that, I'm willing to sit with you right now and educate you. And even if you turn a blind eye to that and close your ears off to it, you're still welcome, and I still want to hear your story. So from Nick Speed on down to DJ Lowe's, there's a spectrum of representation of what Detroit hip hop is and our contributions to the sound and subject matter.
I'm late, so I'm trying to fill myself in on what the subject is, but I hear everybody talking about Detroit.
Yeah, so tell us your name, and what we're talking about is the subject matter, the stories that we tell through hip hop, whether it be dance, music, theater, whatever it is. What stories that are specific to Detroit are folks telling?
What story specific? Well, let me tell my story a little bit so everybody know who I am a little bit. I am DJ Lowe's, a pioneer from Detroit. That's right. I was part of the first rap group to have a full-length album from Detroit. I'm the son of master percussionist Carl Butch Small, who played percussion for Parliament Funkadelic, the Dramatics, Jeff Rowe, Tupac, and Biggie. He played on Biggie stuff too. Dr. Dre, Snoop, everybody. So I'm a product of him. And the sound of Detroit is, I'll give you an example. My dad made some hand claps when I was like 7 years old out of two by 4s and some drawer handles and a door hinge. Those hand claps aren't human hand claps, right? That sound is still sampled on records to this day. They were on More Bounce to the Ounce by Roger Troutman and Zap. So I have witnessed,
That's right.
the sound of Detroit transpire to through the whole entire globe, the world. And I witnessed it happen when I was a kid, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know if that's appropriate to what we're talking about, you know what I'm saying? But I know what I've experienced in hip hop, you know what I'm saying? So,
Yo,
okay.
listen.
The
good to see you,
DJ
Los,
Los.
You know what I'm saying? And yeah, he's a legend.
The
You
DJ
know what I'm
Los.
saying? And what up, though? Nick Speed, nice to see you in the place, for sure. Yeah, I'm on that list of people that he produced too,
Oh, yeah.
I know it's so lengthy, you know what I'm saying? But, man, I just want to say, like, when it comes to Detroit stories, and the stories that are told in hip hop, like, it really goes all the way back to Africa, you feel me? Like the griots. And before there was written language, you know what I'm saying? We would tell stories to generations, you know what I'm saying? 4 generations to understand where we come from and to understand where we were aspiring to go. You know what I'm saying? So, it's no different. It's no different right now. I mean, it's a lot of rappers that don't even write it down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I barely write anything down no more. You know what I'm saying? Now I just go in there and rap it. You know what I'm saying? Think about what I got to say and what I want y'all to hear. And, when I think about Detroit hip hop stories, man, like a lot of people probably remember Kanye West when he dropped Gold Digger.
Mm-hmm.
But we had J to the D with Sack Chaser. You know what I'm saying? And these
And fuck that.
We had Dice with the 40 Made Me Do It. You know what I'm saying? Telling the story about his hood. And, we had a lot of fun. You know what I'm saying? My man Chaos listener, Teferi, will tell you all about the nationalism and the importance of Black power. You feel me? But also hip hop is a lot of fun. And it's about, just street novelist, and explaining what's going on where we come from,
So one of the polarities that has always interested me is the consciousness and the social justice and the use of the N-word. And there was a time, I'm not 50, I'm 44. So, I've had my own, hip hop was like a soundtrack going on in the back of my head. And so I remember there was a point where there was a huge discussion of why use the N-word and who benefits from that, who gains from that. So what do y'all think about that?
I think hip hop, much like so many aspects of African American culture and life, has to do with repurposing. A lot of people say reclaiming, but repurposing. That which is offensive, that which is on your plate, that which is in your literature, which that N-word, it was never a problem in Huck Finn. But it's a problem with Jigga, if he puts it on his album. It was never a problem when somebody that was oppressing you, not of your ilk, said it. But it was only a problem if I say it back and let you know that it isn't solely a title relegated for me. And with the repurposing, like that which is on your plate that maybe shouldn't be, you season it a new way. You say it a new way. And it doesn't make it any more beautiful or any more ugly. The problem is, when I use it, it seems to be far more ugly to the world than when the world says it to me. Why is that? What is it about my lips that makes it so ugly? But all the other lips, long before mine, rolled off like a sonnet. Rolled it off like a sonnet, and nobody cared. It was in our literature. I just turned 40 in February, and it was in my literature. I'm 80s, 90s, 2000s. I didn't become adult till the early 2000s. There's a lot to be said about that. It's only when the rabbit has a gun, everybody got a duck. But when the hunters hunt those rabbits, everyone's comfortable. But there's no point when the rabbit got a gun. And I say that not to justify it and not to demonize it. It is as polarizing as it needs to be to have these type of conversations. But it is a conversation about power dynamics. It is only a problem when the dynamic of that power shifts. That's what hip hop has done with that word. It is showing you that no matter how you see me, no matter how weak you see me, power dynamics are made to shift. And it starts with linguistics. You're smart enough to know that. That's where we're at right now.
Thanks. Awesome. I think, it's all about documentation as well. Like we're documenting history. We're documenting, like, for instance, if you listen to, my favorite album, What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, it starts off, hey, what's happening? People don't talk like that anymore. You know what I'm saying? But like, it was documented that, how people spoke and the slang that they used and everything like that. So if I was writing a book, in fact, if I was writing a diary entry, I'm not just gonna say the fairy tale side of what happened today. I'm gonna say everything that happened today. And that might include that word, so we're just telling the truth, and that's just it. Like this is like an actual documentation of what's really going on right now. So, I just feel like, I'm a recording artist, so my job is to capture the moment, and the moment could be ugly, it could be pretty, it could be whatever the moment is. But if I'm taking a snapshot, or if you took a snapshot right now, and you took another one 5 seconds later, the picture would be different,
Unfortunately, when it's offensive, or if it's offensive, I'll still use it. But I'll ask someone in my company or my culture, is it offensive? And if it is, I won't use it. But then I'll also take the other derogatory terms sometimes, I'm just being myself, and I'll apply them to you. So pick your culture outside of mine, and I'm getting better as a person. But yeah, I'll call you the derogatory names too. So I spread it around, okay, in the interest of fairness, and I'm getting better.
I said one thing, let's talk.
I just wanna say, in the words of Easy E, niggas say nigga, yeah, nigga, it's cool, but monkey say nigga, nut the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? That's really how it's been, and nobody really wants you to say that, and nobody really wants you to embrace that word. Well, you know what I'm saying? This is a word that, we've come to know all too well. And, as the sister said, we repurposed it. You know what I'm saying? It's almost a term of endearment, but it can be a term of hatred. You know what I'm saying? But it is what it is. It's a staple, and is it gonna change? I don't know. We'll see, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, we say it, you know what I'm saying? And that's what it is,
Yeah, I think it's a matter of, it's sort of like when some of our political leaders in the 90s took issue with gangster rap, right? The mothers, especially the mothers, they didn't like it. Some of our spiritual leaders didn't like it. And my position nationally and with my brothers and sisters in hip hop was, hey, that's their right. They ain't gotta like it. So just like they didn't want to be demonized for producing, gangster rap or street rap, don't you dare demonize our elders who didn't prefer it. See, you respect them as well. So I feel the same way about the N-word. I think the beautiful thing about art, period, in this country, especially the Black aesthetic, is that it's a wonderful place where we can have this dialogue and discourse. That's the beauty of art, period. Some of us may not like the word. Some of us don't have an issue with the word. But goddamn it, we're gonna have that argument. And it's okay to have that argument, right? And I respect the folks who ain't with it. And I respect the folks who have an intellectual academic analysis like my sister. But I would argue like a lot of the brothers on the block, a lot of the brothers and sisters on the block that I've talked to, they ain't making no intellectual academic analysis of it. When I ask them why you're saying it, they can't explain it, right? It just feels good. It's what we know. It's what we say, ain't no big deal. They don't know the historical context out of which that word was created. So my position is, whether you like it or not, whether you think it's cool or not, whether you want to repurpose it, whatever you want to do with it, just understand the historical origins out of which the word was created. And it was created, and here's the funny thing about that word. It was a bunch of dumb white supremacists who had white dialect, who mispronounced the word Negro. And they really wasn't saying nigga. These dummies was trying to say nigga, but said it wrong. And then it became nigga, right? And then it was used as a term of hate and disdain and oppression, right? So my thing is this, that's what I always challenge brothers and sisters on, right? Do you understand the historical origins of the word? And what about this? With your bad, brilliant, creative, ingenious black self, how come you can't use other words? Why you gotta use the words created by individuals who have absolutely no regard for humanity? Why we can't be flying slick enough to come up with some other words? Why we gotta use that word, right? I'm just saying, but folks reserve the right to do what they do, and we reserve the right to have intellectual discourse about it. That's where I am. So I don't fall out with brothers and sisters who use it, and I don't fall out with brothers and sisters who have an utter disdain for it. I don't understand both positions.
I think, knowing the roots of it is vital. It also comes from saying niggardly, meaning ignorant. And the repurposing is saying, if we're going back to the root of it, or we could say niggas, which is on N-E-G-U-S, kings, we can flip it and repurpose it to show you that whatever you're projecting onto me, I can mirror it back to you and show you that you are indeed niggardly. Not a nigger, but niggardly. When we get to mispronunciations, we get back to linguistics. We are indeed geniuses who have reclaimed and repurposed and actually showed you what nigger really means. It means your niggardly view of me shows your ignorance, and I'm reflecting it back to you. More of our youth need to understand the history of the word, because they can then understand it not necessarily insulting themselves or each other, but they're insulting the very word that labeled them as such.
All right. So with that being said, we're gonna open it up to you all for questions that you might have.
Hello.
Hey.
Unlike Leotis, I'm a boomer, so I'm going to come from a boomer perspective. Rap and hip hop, I see them as two different things. A lot of people present it to me as one, as being synonymous. I don't. I see rap as a style and hip hop as a form. And so I'll give an example. I worked at an all-male Catholic high school and black males. And one of the students came in with his music playing, and I said, it's time to turn your music off. He said, Miss Solomon, you just don't like rap. I said, no, that's not true. I don't like violent, misogynistic, denigrating rap. Mm-hmm. So that's something that they didn't process, because all rap to them, from what I could feel, was negative. So we are supposed to give prayer every morning, and as faculty, we each take a day, and it starts off with a music of our choice for the kids to settle in, and then we give our spiritual oration. So I said, I'm going to take some music in, and I put my disc in, and it was Lecrae. And I saw the students sitting there rocking into it. And after the presentation, the student who said I didn't like rap came up to me and said, Miss Solomon, I get it. So we have to change it. And if we don't change it, it'll never change. We can't keep saying, well, I'm going to repurpose this. I'm going to do this. Well, this is our experience. Well, I have a lot of experiences that are so negative against men, but you don't want me putting that out there.
Right.
You don't want me
That's right.
putting that out there.
That's right.
So I'm saying, why do we have to be B's and H's and,
Right.
you know, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's us denigrating our own culture, and you don't find other cultures doing that. You just don't find that. And those who promote it, the producers and the CEOs, you say it's their fault, but you're the ones writing the lyrics and presenting it. And they're doing it for their own reason. It could be that they only want this negativity out there about us, because we continue to devolve. It has a negative impact on our community, a negative impact on our children, and we have to do something different. I have this conversation with my son all the time. He does rap, but you know, I just want him to understand that some things have to change in order for all of us to elevate.
I think there's a difference in between, go ahead, sister.
Oh,
No, go ahead,
thank
Queen.
Thank you for
Defer
that.
to you.
Thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Much respect for that. There's also repurposing in your statement. Lecrae himself, a gospel rapper, or at least he was. He's kind of moderate as of recent. But he
always positive.
Yeah, and there's so much in regards to rap and hip hop that is positive. The problem is, it's not that we're solely writing negative subject matter. It's that's what's being projected. That's what's being put out. Because if you're industrious enough, for every gangster rapper, there's a conscious Pan-African rapper who hasn't necessarily repurposed hip hop for Christian rap, but stayed true to the 5% base of it that it came from. So there's the negativity is only as pervasive as the radio waves. It is only as negative in your house as your own record player. So we have choices. The problem with this current landscape is we're made to believe that we only have 5 or 6 artists that we can listen to. If you're industrious enough, you can find 60 other artists to contrast those 6 negative artists that are permeating the airwaves. So just like it's our responsibility to write what we want to hear, we also have to dig for what we want to hear. There's a DJ that will dig through the crates and find somebody to contrast any negative artist that I can name right now who have 20 albums to prove me wrong, that hip hop isn't solely projecting a negative image or sound. But we as a people have to be industrious enough to seek out those artists that are upholding our principles. The beauty about hip hop is it is a cell group type of music. This region, this cell group of people, this neighborhood speak this particular way. I don't necessarily dig that in on jail with my cell group. Let's go over here West Coast. I dig that. They're saying something I can relate to. But unless I'm industrious enough to look for my sound, because you have a place in it. Each individual in here has a place in the sound in hip hop if you search for it. But if you go to mainstream and then generalizing what you hear in mainstream as the sole image or sound to hip hop, you're going to forever be at a deficit in an appreciation of it because you're going to see it as negative. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I wish I had been taking notes because I had so many questions and comments and everybody said really good stuff. And I agree with both sides because growing up with hip hop through my teenage years, I went through with Run DMC, Public Enemy, X-Clan, all of that good stuff, right? And then, of course, Two Live Crew came about during that time. And then, then when Tipper Gore and all them started fussing about it, my then boyfriend was like, oh, they should leave it alone. They should leave it alone. And so now I feel as a parent today, thinking back 35 years ago, if something had happened a little stronger than the parental guidance, maybe hip hop would not be what we were talking about it has become. I don't know. I can't predict, I can't go back that far. But I will say this, that it is the onus of us parents to make sure our children know what, I don't want to say good hip hop, but what hip hop used to be that we like. So our kids on their playlist, they'll have some Public Enemy. They gonna have some Run DMC. I was surprised my daughter came home one day, she was playing X-Clan. You know, she'll have some Tribe Called Quest, you know, something, some of those lines. And I feel about 8 years ago, they both came to me and they said, this music out here is trash. And I said, stop listening to it. Stop listening to it. If you and your friends said, we're not listening to this, we're not buying this, we're not downloading this, we're not streaming this, they have to give you what you want. They have to give you, and at the time they were like, well, Kendrick Lamar, we like Kendrick Lamar, he's good, and J. Cole, they were citing. But, with what's going on in the streets today, especially the violence that happens so often in our neighborhood, I might get some pushback today. I say, I'm a parent, I'm 55 years old, almost 56, and I say, I blame hip hop, I blame the music, because of the stuff that they talk about. And I'm saying, Sam's giving me the look.
No, I'm gonna give you I was just going to insert real quick, Angela. Prince said it best. He said, we only imitate our atmosphere.
Yeah.
This is the atmosphere that we set.
Yeah,
So
but
what
I
you-
wanted to
But-
but if I may, but the reality is this, right? Our atmosphere is a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right? We are not just gangsters. We are not just whores of BITCHs. We're not just killers and shooters or savages. That's not just who we are. Now, here's my.
Cardi B, when you got Cardi B.
I got you, but here's my challenge.
Out there with their stuff.
Right.
That's not good for these girls.
I got you, but if I may, here's my challenge though, and I think if I heard my sister correctly, here's my challenge though to our community. This is not like back in the day when the only way you could hear music was through the radio and through what you purchased, right? The difference now is we have social media and the internet. You got YouTube. There are thousands of positive rap artists, male and female. All you got to do is put in positive rap. And you can pull up all the positive rappers you want to hear. So at some point, we have to exert our self-determination and make a conscious decision that we as a community or as a certain family or as an individual doesn't want that garbage and choose to listen to positive hip hop. Now here's the other part of that though. I don't attack folk. Well, actually, I'm critical of a lot of our drill rappers and a lot of negative rap music, right? But I'm not going to demonize them to the point that I see them beyond redemption and transformation. In that case, I could not love my brother. In that case, I could not love myself. Because the only difference between me and him is that I didn't get caught. You understand what I'm saying? Right? I'm saying, so I refuse to demonize and over-criminalize black males to the point that they are beyond transformation and redemption, but I also reserve the right to embrace and appreciate the positions of our elders and of righteous black folk who say, I don't want that. And you may have a disdain for that, and you reserve the right to feel that way. And that's the beauty of art. This is an old argument, and Dr. Josh, you know Dr. Elaine Locke, and you've read Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, right? This fight goes back to then. Du Bois looked at black music and black art as an instrument for the liberation of our people. That was Du Bois' position. Dr. Elaine Locke says, he's from Harlem. He says, well, no, the very right that we reserve the right to say what we want to say, when we want to say it, how we want to say it, is a pure expression of liberation. See, so that is really the schism. That's really what we're dealing with. When you hear the gangster rappers or the street rappers or the cats rapping about negative things, they're saying, I am exerting my sense of selfhood. I'm expressing my reality, and I'm free. I can say what the hell I want to say. This is what they're saying, right? And then you have the other side that says, yeah, you may reserve the right to say what you want to say, but we're going to hold you accountable for saying it.
Yes.
And that's perfectly okay. So I just think we have to understand now on the commercial side, I will agree. Just like in the state of Michigan in 1994 in particular, on forward, there was an intentional plan to destroy African-centered education in the public school system. That's really what the overthrow or the taking over of the DPS was all about. Destroying African-centered education. That's my belief. At that same time, there was an intentional plan to destroy Black nationalist and Black conscious hip hop. You saw it. X-Clan went away, Public Enemy went away, KRS-One went away, and mainly because the radios controlled what we listened to and what we would like and what we would hear, they intentionally stopped playing those artists. So all of us are keenly aware of the fact that that was by design, right? And we have a responsibility to fight against the fact that these folks who really care nothing about our image and interest decided to remove that option away from us, right?
I think if rap music didn't even exist, this world would still be a sick place. You know what I mean? I don't think rap music has, like, okay, it's like the standards always can be raised and they can always be lowered. Like, for instance, like, you know, the world that we were living in when Run DMC and Roxanne was out is a different world from today. For instance, like, when I was growing up, I would watch The Simpsons, and then like they have like little small cuss words in there. Oh, damn, you know what I'm saying? It's like the Bugs Bunny cartoons didn't have that. You see what I'm saying? So the world was changing. So it's like they just constantly was letting little stuff slide to the point that we are where we are today. I mean, if you look at the award shows, they got like full-on people wearing, you know, dressed as the devil, you know, performing. Like this was not gonna happen in, you know, another time era, you know what I mean? So it's like the subject matter of the songs is only, it's only that, you know, what's being censored or what's being allowed to be played in a public setting, you know, and like, what was it, like when I was growing up, okay, like for instance, when Run DMC came out, like, if you say you heard my rhymes, we're gonna have to fight because I just made the mother up last night. Like that was like the hypest line in the whole song. Cause he cussed one time. You know what I mean? It was so shocking. You know, and it's like now, like, if you say the same rhyme, people just be staring at him like, you know what I mean? So it's like that's just the way of the world. It's like the world has changed, like from the Motown days, and then all of a sudden you get Curtis Mayfield. I'm your mama, I'm your daddy, I'm the nigga in the alley. You know what I mean? That was shocking. So what's shocking now today will not be shocking in a few years, 5 years from now. You know, it's only gonna get worse.
Really quick, I'm sorry. Really quick, I wanted to touch on what the sister said back there. And you know, the crazy part of the contrast between the conscious rap and the wild rump shaking rap that we heard from Luke and Two Live Crew were instrumental going to the Supreme Court and making sure that the only thing of rump shaking music, but that the conscious community still had a right to say what they needed or wanted to say. It wasn't a conscious, quote unquote, rapper that went to the Supreme Court. It was Two Live Crew, the ass shakers. And that's what I mean about not discrediting or discarding away with those that are learning to tell the narrative a little bit more raunchy than we would like. We have the right to turn it off, but they also have a right to their narrative. And fortunately, with his raunchiness, it brought so much attention to the world of hip hop and freedom of speech that he went to the Supreme Court, not just for his rump shaking music, but that for everybody to say what they wanted to say freely. And with Nick Speed with cartoon, exactly, the Simpsons was so offensive to some, but yet still we had Looney Tunes where they had Mammy and cauldrons, picking and cultures, and that was never a problem. There are so many ways to call me an N-word versus calling me N-word. I've been called an N-word by hearing you're not qualified, and I know I was. I know what you're saying.
So we have
I pick it up.
one last question.
This lady had a question. I was going to say, I remember, my daughter is 27 today, but I remember when I bought her the hip hop music, I bought her like Nas, I bought her, and you know, you can't be what you want to be. That was a positive rap. And they still play that today. But I do know, I had a dance studio too, and we, you know, rock supersonic and did all of, used all that type of music too. And let the music take control by Missy Elliott. We used that type of music. But I also bought the, you know, with the parental advisory. I didn't, you know, I looked at that when I brought that type of music to educate the Black children that I taught the dance to in my dance studio for 25 years. I was picked you have to be selective. You don't pick the worst version, you pick the best version, or you pick the instrumental version that still has the beat, and they can still do the hip hop or the jit or whatever they want to do. But you just have to use discretion. And I think what it is now, that people don't use discretion. They have lost the respect of the discretion of, they let the kids choose everything.
Yes.
The parents have to take over the right.
Yes.
Or the owners have to take over the right. If you have a dance studio, or if you have a hip hop studio, you have to take over the right, what you want to present. Because what you present is part of what you are too. And they look at you that way. I wanted to be respected in the community. I wanted people to come to my dance studio, and I wanted them to respect what I did. So I wouldn't pick the music that had derogatory statements about women or men or people going to prison or drugs and all that. I picked the music that they could dance to, and they still had the beats and everything in it. So it just depends on how you look at things.
Thank you.
I think that's so.
One last question, sorry. I got the 5-minute warning. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to ask a question.
Yeah, I think that, in the question I put out there in terms of our responsibility, when our children, it's good to say let them choose, but when they in the hood, in the streets all alone, it's affected, the state of our young people is just crazy right now, and so to glorify being a dope fiend, talking about sipping on scissor and now lean, everybody is drinking lean and putting Molly Percocet, all that type of stuff. They take the Percocets all day long, putting it inside the lean, and so our children are out here as zombies. And they killing people. We just had to bury a guy yesterday, young kid, rapper, Detroit hip hop, 18 years old, shot 20 times, and that list goes on and on and on because they had these rap beefs going on over the internet and stuff like that. So where's the responsibility as the ones who are the pioneers to continue to spread this message of peace and self-love? Because we're destroying ourselves and they listening to the music and being influenced by it. That's a reality.
That's real. You know what? I mean, I could have said it better. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to, as a community, it takes a village, right?
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? It takes a village to raise a child. And one parent, it's going to be difficult for them to direct that child when they're not there at all times. You know what I'm saying? This kid's going to his friend's house, he's going to the family house, and they're exposed to all types of things. But, it's important that they know. I mean, even these records, these CDs and things, well, not too many CDs anymore, right? Used to say parental advisory on, and parents took note of that. They wouldn't buy that record for their kids, you know what I'm saying? But now it's not so much CDs, everything is digital. So the kids are hearing it on Spotify and they're hearing it, on YouTube, and it's just right there for them. It's available, but knowing that, we have to be the ones to guide our children in the way, and understanding, you gotta be there. Otherwise, I mean, the fact of the matter is, the CEOs of the record labels are the same people who own the private prisons.
Absolutely.
You feel me?
Yeah, that's true.
And so this is widely understood, the content in the music is created to funnel as many of us into these prisons, you know what I'm saying? So that you got free slave labor right there, you know what I'm saying? So listen, you know what I'm saying? You definitely gotta beware and tell your kids. I mean, I got a lot of respect for the ladies that have spoke, you know what I'm saying? Everybody that spoke, but I can tell that y'all do love hip hop and love the culture and the art form, and all the artists you all have named, and you know what I'm saying, it's really incredible, but it's we know it's permeated all areas of life, so we got to just stay on our children and make sure that they know what's going on.
As a super fan of the heritage of this music and other artists, I just have to say that to Detroit and our hip hop
artists and our crowd is amazing. I don't know how anybody else does it in any other city, but to see that our legends, they didn't just grow up, they're not out just chasing a hit 50 years later, 40 years later. They're activists, they're businessmen, and they are contributing factors in our community. And I love that about Detroit hip hop, the progression of our artists and who they are as men and women now.
Right.
And thank you for having us to celebrate.
Thank you.
And on that note, we have to close this panel out. I want to thank our panelists. Let's give them all one more round of applause. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy lives and schedules and joining us tonight. As my favorite rapper once said, Jay-Z, you could be anywhere in the world, but you chose to be with us tonight. And we appreciate that. And the evening is not quite done. The panel is done. But out in the lobby, we have a short musical performance by Isis DeMille. She's going to give us an ode to hip hop, and then the band is going to keep playing, and we still got music and drinks. Afterglow after this until 9 o'clock. You don't have to rush out of here, please. You can commiserate with our panelists and hang out and talk to them more personally. And we have more programming throughout the weekend. Again, the Wolverine Outdoor Stage is part of the Concert of Colors. It's Saturday and Sunday. We have several acts this year. We're unveiling something new and different. On Sunday, we're actually offering a Sunday service. We're partnering with the Arc Detroit Church, led by Boyd White III, U of M alumnus, prominent attorney and pastor here in the city, to offer something different. And we have plenty of good entertainment, music. Please join us on the southeast lawn of Detroit Institute of Arts. Bring a cooler, bring a chair, hang out with us for the weekend. It's going to be a great time. The Detroit Center hosts programming such as this throughout the year. Please join our newsletter, sign up, come back, and thank you all for your time, and we really appreciate you. And let's go check out ISIS.
We need to get a photo. You were
My daughter.
What's the chance of somebody having an iPhone charger around here?
Oh, hey, I know myself. I'm at about 50% or less myself. I want to say something later about here.
The doctor, you in there? Tighten up, tighten up.